you really didn't like me because, based on the impression that I got from Mendel,
What?
you're very, you're not thrilled about him smoking cigars.
Well, the best part is that recently I tried a few of his cigars with him.
Really?
And he was so excited by this
Yep.
that he said to me, you know, maybe this can be our thing. I'm like,
beautiful.
I don't know about that. But it was a nice attempt.
Welcome to Extra Sauce. My name is Chaim Cohn, and I just wrapped up a wonderful conversation with my friend Mendel Groden and his wife Malka. They have a wonderful story to tell, and it's rich with insight and lessons, and also a call to action. I'll let it speak for itself, but just to set some context, Mendel and Malka have been married for 9 years, and for many years they struggled with infertility. And 2 years ago, they adopted their first child, Isaac, and just a few months later, their daughter, Fania. Both Isaac and Fania are biracial, which obviously adds to some of the complexities, the existing complexities with adoption, and adoption specifically within the Orthodox Jewish community and the Crown Heights community in particular. We talked about a few different things and went in a few different directions, but it was a rich conversation and shed a light on a number of things. And it's interesting how sometimes the more unique the situation, the more potential it has to give new insight onto things that we might otherwise overlook or stay comfortable into old ways of thinking, living, speaking. And if we're wise, we'll take heed to those situations as observers and take them to heart. And I'm going to try to do that. Mendel's a wonderful guy, and he's been a friend for some years. And every once in a while, we'll get together for some cigars and coffee and talk about whatever. And I got to meet his wife, Malka, about 2 years ago when he invited me for Shabbos lunch. And I got to hear more about their story. So that's enough out of me. And this is Malka and Mendel Groden. As always, welcome your feedback. I'll put some links in the description for things that Malka has written. And if I don't speak to you, and this does get posted before Rosh Hashanah, wishing you all a happy and sweet new year. And as we get to in the conversation, sweet in the sense of, well, realizing that what we already have in our lives is sweet. Thanks for listening, and look forward to talking to you soon.
I don't know. We got married really young. We don't really know.
How old were you when you got married?
I was 19. And
I was 23.
Sometimes like people get married that young, and then they do some growing up, and they kind of go in different directions. You guys were, would you say, lucky in the way that you kind of,
Yeah, definitely.
did that together?
Yeah.
Yeah. We were so young. It's crazy. I turned 20 a few months after we got married. Mendel's whole college career was during our was during marriage. I mean, I lost weight. Like I looked like a completely different person before when we got married. I mean, so much changed. It's been 9 years. I mean, when I look at, when someone tells me they got married last year, I'm like, man, I've been married 9 years. Not that, I mean, God willing, many years to come. But yeah, it's been an evolution. Completely different people. Luckily, we have enough in common to keep us together.
Like cigars.
Right.
Cigars, our thing.
At what point did you were from the get-go, you were like, you got married, you wanted to have children from the start?
No. I mean, when we got married, it's not even something I thought about that was or wasn't going to have children. When we got married, that's just what you did. You get married, and then within a year and a half, you have a kid, regardless of if you really want to or not. So that's kind of the way I approached it. And then it just didn't happen. And I remember we called a Rav, I think, because I always like to do things right. So about a year and a half, and remember we called the Rav, or you called the Rav, and he said, for 2 years, don't worry about it. Remember that?
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's also what, like, a doctor would have said also.
Right.
For young people, they don't do much until a year and a half, 2 years.
Right. But that was the way, and even when we started saying like, oh, we should probably look into this, it's not like at that point I had some burning desire to have a child. It was just like that was the step we were going to take next. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean,
did you have a burning desire to have a child?
No, I mean, looking back, I mean, in a sense, it's kind of almost a blessing that you have some time, when you get married so quickly and so young.
Gosh.
It really works out nicely if you have some time to just be with each other and grow a bit.
Right.
And like at least begin to learn what it means to live with someone, and get over that initial. So many people get married and they have that initial stage of infatuation and this and that, and like you have to learn how to live your life a little bit as regular people, and we got to do that.
So you lucked out in that way.
We lucked out in many, many ways, but yeah, in that way, yes.
I know this wasn't necessarily going to be the topic, but since we're talking about that, a lot of friends who get married and they jump right into that, and it becomes almost like a desirable distraction from the relationship. It's like something, and I've often heard sentiments like, you want to have a kid right away because just having the two of you, you don't have a joint mission, something greater than yourselves to keep you on the same page. I'm like, well, what's that supposed to mean?
That sounds really bizarre.
It sounds like,
really? Is that like the party line?
I've heard sentiments like that. Yeah.
Really?
So it's like, oh, God forbid we should have too much quiet time where it's just us, because we'll probably like want to kill each other. So let's like have a project.
That sounds really bizarre.
That's like when the couple wants to get divorced, they go to the Rav. Classic.
Have
the Rav
a
is always like, have a
baby.
baby.
Right.
Not anymore, hopefully, but I mean that was always the case. I don't know. It's hard because I'm in a lot of ways a party line person. So there was always that sentiment: you get married, and within a year and a half, or whatever, 11 months, you have a baby. So it's hard for me to argue with that sentiment. But we were very lucky that we had time to grow as people.
Now, Malka, I read your article like 2 years ago in the Sheikh Chabad newsletter. I think I was at your house for lunch, Shabbos lunch, and then I heard about it and I read it while I was there. In it, you described like, a few years long of this being like the focal point of your life and like taking up a lot of space. What with running around from doctor to doctor and the infertility treatments, and you've spoken a lot about it, but could you just kind of wrap that up in a few minutes for me?
Sure. So, I mean, again, we started this, we were very, very young. So we were every doctor's like dream when we walked in, because we're money signs, we're good. We're easy young people, no problem. We're going to have a baby within a year. But slowly, and that was with all the kind of light treatments, but slowly with treatment after treatment, that didn't work. And we went, to the big guns. And that, didn't work either. We had repeated failure after failure. We went from doctor to doctor. And I wouldn't say that time it was fully the focal point of my life when we were doing it. A treatment can take, let's say, 4 to 6 weeks, depending on what you're doing, how you have to prepare, And so during that time, obviously, like I would become mentally obsessed with it. I would spiritually become obsessed with it, meaning like thinking about everything that I'm doing and how is it contributing towards our future, and will we have a child based on the fact of, you know, if I davened or if I, you know, gave some tzedakah or something like that. I was very obsessed with that at that time. But when we would have a failure, we'd take some time in between. And during that time, we kind of lived our lives. We, you know, traveled. Not that much.
But we'd like go down to Borough Park, you know.
We went to South Street Seaport.
Yeah.
But we did things. We hung out. We read books. We lived. Like we had full lives. And then it was always like, when should we go back to it? Should we not go back to it? And that's when it becomes like the focal point, like you're every day, and you think like you see a date coming up on the calendar, like I would say a movie poster, and it would say, you know, January 13th, and I would think, oh, like by then I'll know, you know, or you think about the summer and you think like I could be pregnant in the summer. Alas, that didn't happen. And we did that for several years. I would say probably 4.5 years, something like that we were actively.
Yeah, something like that.
Where were you at in all this?
I don't remember actually. What do you mean by where?
I mean, like, where was your head at? Where were you, like?
I think I was different, very different. So for me, the you know, the hardest part was seeing my wife in like a lot of distress about this. To me, to be honest, I don't know. I wasn't very. I wanted to have children, but I don't know. I know I used to say this to you, and it definitely like just like I now know that it's like this is not a helpful thing to like say to women, but like I would tell Malka, like, you know, like I married you for you. I mean, I hope we have kids, and it will be sad if we don't.
That wasn't a bad thing to say, but I mean, it has its place to say something like that.
I know. I don't know. I think
it just doesn't replace the fact that, you know,
I think I was less internally torn up about not having biological children.
Right. Yeah, you were the trailblazer early on. In general, even when you would say things like that, early on you said things like, "Oh, we can adopt," and I was like, "No way, we're not adopting.
I mean, we both weren't ready for that then. But yeah, like it really didn't. It didn't mean the same to me.
Huh. Yeah, but you were very good about like, protecting me in the whole process and making sure that I was okay, regardless if I had to not talk to people, if I had to whatever it was, if I, you know.
To me, that I'm just hearing it, but it sounds real like a beautiful thing to say. I'm contrasting that with something that I hear that always really like makes me feel yucky.
Like when I hear stories about, sorry to interrupt, when I hear stories about people who like, and I don't like actually know anyone like this. It's like I've heard, you know, couples married for like 10 years and then they get divorced because they couldn't have kids.
Right.
And not to like, I don't want to sound judgmental. It's not being judgmental on individuals. It's just like that as a thing that can happen. It's just, that's very not.
Well, you don't know why they really got divorced, A, and B,
no,
it's something like old Crown Heights ladies are like, they were married and then they got divorced. Like, you don't know what was going on, to be fair.
Right.
But
something else.
But like for your whole marriage to just make it a break, you know, the make
so
it a
goal-oriented.
break it part of your marriage is like having children.
Remember when we went to an A-Time conference. A-Time is an infertility support group. Is it run by Hasidim?
Yeah.
And they put on these beautiful events, and we didn't go to anything. And then for some reason, I saw this thing about a conference, a Shabbaton. I was like, let's go. And we went. It was completely. It was in that Stamford hotel that everyone has events in. Right. It was completely segregated the whole time, like hot ceiling to floor mechitzas. The women's side was like beautifully done with, you know, suede fancy chairs and flowers, and the men's side was very bare. But we met a lot of people. And remember afterwards we would talk about how some of the couples we had met that it was just so hard to hear that so much of the relationship was so focused on would they have children, would they not have children, you know? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I mean, a lot. A large part of our relationship at these points in times when we were dealing with was also like that was the conversation, but it was never about our relationship.
Right.
Like our relationship, our marriage
Right. Our
wasn't
friendship.
centered about whether there was a separate. There's like us. There's our relationship. There's our marriage, and then there was this big, topic like, are we gonna have kids? How are we gonna have kids?
Right.
Right.
But
But it had no
Sorry, we
bearing.
interrupted you a long
It
No,
time.
had
no,
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 It
this is
had
not
no
about-
bearing on our marriage.
right.
I mean, right. It didn't have a make it or break it bearing on our marriage. It did have a bearing on our marriage.
Yeah,
but-
Yeah.
Semantics.
No, but it's obviously extra stress, money, so much money that we spent. That could have went to a down payment. No. It was important that we tried, but we spent a lot of money.
You said like they see dollar bills. You're saying that there's like a business element to that whole thing.
Of course.
Yeah.
Why don't you talk about money for a second? Just so that people
so,
listening have a
okay, so
sense
the
of,
way
like-
in general, they typically will start people on simple things, medications, things like that, and then often, depending obviously on people's problem, they'll often do IUIs next. That's intrauterine insemination. That's when they take the sperm and they put it in, but it's like you're awake for that process. There'll be like a Hasidic woman that meets you there for hashkacha purposes to watch the sperm, and that's cheap. So insurance really loves it when people do that, even though it often does not work. I don't know the statistics, but most people I know, that's not the thing that helped them have a baby. The next level is IVF, in vitro fertilization. So that's obviously where there's a whole lab element of it, and the embryo is fertilized outside in the lab. So that's obviously much more expensive. So I would say IVF probably costs between $12,000 to $15,000 plus medication can be another $2,000 to $5,000 depending on what the issue is. So it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money, and there's this weird element with doctors, great doctors, but you'll go to a doctor and they have like a sick watch and a comb over and all their signs behind them, and I don't know, you're in or you're out. Can you do it?
Right.
You can transfer you to Maria and you could talk about finances, or you're out. So that's a big element.
And they know a lot of people are feeling desperate.
Right. Yeah.
They know they have you.
Right.
But
Yeah,
you
we
have
had
nowhere else to go.
We had some bad doctor experience. I don't want to say that. We had plenty of great doctors that are doing great work, but we did have some poor bedside manner experiences. Where I would be in tears. Imagine you're hopped up on hormones, and also you think like, will I or will I not have a child? And this may be one of our last chances. And they're like, oh, unfortunately, it's not looking great, but hop up onto the table. And I'm crying, and Mendel's like, no, you don't have to listen to them. If you need a moment to collect yourself, you can collect yourself. And I'm like, man in white coat said I must do this. I'm going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's intense.
Yeah, it's very intense. The only way to remember it without crying is laughing about it. You know what I mean? It's very intense. You'll sit in a waiting room with lots of women sitting there. And a few Hasidic couples like standing by billing, like quietly discussing things. Remember that?
Yeah.
And you wait for them to call you, and there's just so much waiting. There's so much dead time in between things where you're not actually doing things.
Kind of like the beginning of this interview.
And it's hard.
We made off easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
The one thing I wanted to say, I was like contrasting with that sentiment that you shared with your wife with something that I hear. I want you to be the mother of my children. You're gonna, or like you hear Tony Soprano, or like in the Italian mafia culture is oftentimes like they have their guma, like the woman, their mistress, and then they have like the mother of their children, like meaning the fact that they gave birth to the fruit of their loins is almost what gives them their status. It's a very twisted, like primitive thing that sometimes is glorified, and that's why I almost feel like we can fall prey to that, and this kind of, either you already were, or your experience gave you an opportunity to double down on the fact that you love your wife just because she's your wife. Like, but and I'm wondering if almost people sometimes don't get that, and it becomes like everything is just a means for a greater end, and we don't have the ability to just, okay, is this valuable in and of itself, even if it doesn't bring about the next stage. I don't know, I'm gonna get flack for this, but like it could happen that someone just has one child after another, and part of me is like, did you like get to know this kid yet? And like right around the time that they might have the headspace to like maybe not be changing diapers every second and like maybe get to engage with their kid, they're having another one, and they could blame it on or like attribute that to our culture. But sometimes I think I see it as like a reason to not have to like be present for life, because there's always something else, something the next thing to do. Anyway.
Yeah, but I mean, I think a lot of aspects of life can be used that way.
Right.
People can dive into their careers and use it in that sense. Yeah, it's not necessarily about kids.
Yeah. So I want you were talking before about that intense process, and there's like a spiritual element there for you as a Jewish woman. I think maybe particularly as a Hasidic Jewish woman, there's so many of our stories revolve around, going to the Rebbe for a bracha, and it's like a whole thing that goes back. I'm not just saying it within contemporary Lubavitch culture. That goes back like a lot of the Baal Shem Tov stories and all the Hasidic lores around that. What's that about, by the way? Why is there so much there? I don't know.
Such an essential. What do you mean? It's such an essential blessing. It's like the core of who we are. Right. And if that miracle can happen, then anything can happen. I don't know. It's like it's hard for me to hear those stories. Right. I don't even now. Like there was something recently circulating. It's hard for me to read them because they're often written in this way of, especially now. And I'm not. Someone drank some wine or a Rebbe wine, or someone, was kvater, and there's so much attributed to that direct act as opposed to, I don't know, I think of the segula, it's like a thumbs up from God. Am I allowed to say that? That's how I think of a segula.
I'm right with you.
You know, it's representative of something larger, like all the good that we do in the world, all everything that we do as Jews, all the medical intervention that we're blessed or not, or blessed to have. It's a whole package deal. And there's such a simplicity with she drank the wine, and then now 9 months later she had a baby. It's rough. And actually, one of the last times that I decided to do something, as my sister-in-law was pregnant, and there's this concept of when a woman is in her 9th month, someone who wants children will go to the mikveh after her. She'll dip beforehand, the woman in her 9th month, and then the woman who has to go to the mikveh will dip afterwards. And I remember when my sister-in-law asked me if I wanted to do this, I was like, I'm so fed up with all these segulas. But I called someone who's Mendel's close to, who I really respect and admire, and I asked him, what should I do? And he said, it's a holy concept brought down in the books. Oh no, first you spoke to that person, and he said it's a holy concept brought down in the books. And then I called a Rav who I have a good relationship with, and I said to him, what should I do? And he said, if you want to do it, do it. If you don't want to do it, don't do it. Like, it's a nice thing, if it makes you feel good. And then I decided, you know what, I'm gonna do it. But there's such lore and such, I don't know, there's so much attributed to this one little thing that it kind of takes away from the whole picture of what goes into something. I don't know. Yeah. Is that a fair way of attributing it? Makes me crazy when people will tell me these stories and they want me to feel good about it,
But I think that's a good segue into the other side of this, is that I think both of us see our story in the same line, right, the same tradition as all of these miracle stories. Right. So you have the story where the guy drank the Rebbe wine and 9 months later he had a baby, and all these miracles. I very much, and I think you think the same, I very much see our story in the exact same way.
Right.
And can you maybe say how long after this mikvah story was our son born?
9 months, baby. Woo!
Okay.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
I very much see our story
Same.
in the same tradition.
I'm gonna get this story wrong, but the point of it I remember. Shlomo Kabach, I think, said it. It's like just one of these stories about some poor Jew in the shtetl was going to lose everything or go into the dungeon because he couldn't pay the rent from the local parts or some fill in the blanks. And the point of the story anyway, right? He kind of gets the money, but then he loses it again and feels like God abandoned him. And then someone sees him the next day and he's absolutely like ecstatic and happy. And he says, well, I assume you found the money. He's like, no. He says, what are you so happy about? He's like, yeah, I went to the shul to daven but I found out like why this is meant to be my lot. Forget exactly how the story played out, but that was the point. The answer didn't come in the form of what he thought he wanted. It came in what was supposed to happen, and the joy and the miracle, if you will, was in that discovery. Like he didn't get the money, but I realized that wasn't really what I wanted. It's like a arc you can find in everywhere in life, and we all have some story which is close to our entire life story, is often in the form of what we say in Yiddish, Mensch tracht und Gott lacht, which is, I have my plan, and then inevitably, because it's life, things don't go according to plan. But if I'm lucky, I find out how this is exactly what was supposed to happen, and I don't always know that in the process. It feels like everything is going wrong, but then everything is going exactly right. And the acceptance of that in the form of however that happens for us is the miracle, right? But so often religion can turn into what my friend calls superstition or transactional, where it feels more like we're just trying to manipulate God into getting our stuff. Give me my stuff.
Yeah, we'll probably talk more about this soon, but I'm often told, not really so much anymore, because I'm pretty straightforward about it. But like I used to get a lot, at Farbrengens, people are drinking, getting emotionally excited about God, and someone would inevitably turn to me and say, Chaim, Farbrengen can do, Malas Machol, etc., can't even do, and the Abisher should bless you with your own children. And I got very used to saying, I really appreciate the sentiment, but I don't accept your bracha. And then I like shock value, so I would just stop there and, watch their eyes get all wide like a deer in the headlights, and they'd be like, what do you mean? Like, I just don't accept very specific brachas like that. Well, if you want to give me a bracha, you should just, how about let's agree on the Abisher should bless me the Abisher should continue to bless me like he has abundantly until now. I'll drink to that. So yeah, I mean, it's just about, it's kind of like what you're saying. It's perception. You have to have, your head has to be open. You have to be open to finding blessing in a place where you weren't necessarily looking initially, and not focusing on a very specific goal.
And also even like all these stories of barrenness that we're so used to, that for so many people used to tell me, like you're like one of the mahos, and I would always say, I don't really want to be like one of the mahos. Thanks so much. But now I can really associate, like I see that story and I see salvation, just like I see salvation there. There's salvation in our story too. Like the ending might look a little bit different, but it's the same thing in many ways,
In many ways, it's not. We'll talk about specifics.
In many ways, it's not. I didn't.
Such as life, or I mean, the notion of the blessing or miracle being the end all is obviously not
right.
Not part of it. It's an opportunity to start again that process of seeking the blessing, but knowing based on your previous experience that it's not always going to look exactly what I expect it to look like. And then I find out that that's also how it's supposed to be. So you wrote something really beautiful in that article about this trip to the isle that you had, and like an awakening or realization you had around this slogan that we often use so much and sometimes don't pay attention to the meaning, or tracht goed wird sein good. Think good and it will be good. So could you tell us about that?
Sure. So growing up, obviously, tracht goed wird sein good was in that same magical thinking vein of we're going to think good. I remember in camp, like with Gush Katif, just like feeling that we were going to will this and then it was going to happen. And that we could have these like specific prayers and attribute our thoughts a specific way, and then God would have to acquiesce. But I was having a lot of trouble with it because obviously things weren't going my way, and that's in general. Like for a long time, I always struggled with that religiously. Like I would do things, and I would do things with the intention of getting what I wanted, which I think many people do. And then I went to speak to Brenda Schaefer about it, and she told me that that's not what tracht goed wird sein good means. That tracht goed wird sein good means we're asking God that He should make what happens around us, that should be the good. Whatever the situation that we end up in, that God places us in, that situation, that will be the good, and we should be able to see that. That's tracht goed wird sein good. And I remember thinking, like, man, she's tripping. Like, this is obviously not right. But it took me time, and I mean, that's really a theory I've embraced. But I've gotten pushback. I remember being at a Farbrengen. It was before I had kids. So at Farbrengens, anyone who has gone through infertility knows that Farbrengens is when people, you just become the object of everyone's prayers. So I remember saying this concept because I was very taken by it, and someone there said, and I said something like, it's not a magical thing. And she said, well, I'd like to think that there's something magical to it. Like there was there's a fear of accepting this concept in that way. Do you know what I mean? And there is something magical to it, of course, because there is something, like I look back and I think, wow, my prayers were answered. But it would have been healthier if earlier on I would have prayed for, with an element of surrender almost, you know what I mean? Instead of such direction and intention. I
imagine the key differentiation is between magic and miracle.
Right. Oh, beautiful.
I think sometimes when people use that phrase or give brachas about specific things, they're entering the realm of magic or manipulation. So it's like, this is like a long time pet peeve of mine, which is why when I read your thing, it was like so perfect. And I've been, interestingly enough, at Farbrengens oftentimes like polling to see, and I will say more than not, people tell me what you said, that no, it does mean that that if I am think positive, without getting into the whole like the impact of positive thinking, like putting that aside,
right,
that in general be about thinking positive or praying positive, that we are even charged with and invited to the opportunity of asking for particular things with the expectations or the hope that we'll get those particular things, or that somehow there is something that's going to happen, meaning to say they take that expression to mean that I'm actually going to think positive around my particular thing, not that my attitude about it will change or my experience around my reality will change, but reality itself will change to the end of what I particularly am asking for. And it's so fundamental. One of the situations where I see it and like it really scares me is when someone is sick and they'll have children rally and say Tehillim, And it's as if, and sometimes they'll say it outright, or we're praying for refuah shlema, and that's great. But what often isn't being communicated is that it isn't, like we have the responsibility, as an expression in Yiddish that I heard Elie Wiesel repeat. He said, Jews don't rely on miracles. Jews say Tehillim. It's a beautiful sentiment. But does that mean that we say Tehillim and then we get what we want, be it the refuah shlema or whatever else? Or is it that we say Tehillim to remind ourselves that whatever God has in store is for the good, and I want to help put myself in a situation or a state of mind where I can appreciate that even when it doesn't appear that way. Another thing that we often pay lip service is the same thing. Someone will make a l'chaim and give you a bracha, and they'll say something. They'll say you should have good and you should have revealed good. A terev hanira v'hanigla, right? And the Rebbe said that, right? But does that mean, what does that mean? So many times I ask people, what does that mean? And they say, it shouldn't just be good on God's terms, it should be good on human terms. So I'm like, okay, let's flesh this out a bit. And I kind of started coining the phrase where I feel comfortable. I was like, basically, your perception of God is this guy who's going around giving cancer. Right? God just wants to give you cancer. But if somehow you can like really rub his back good enough and say the things he likes to hear, you could get him to change his mind or forget to give you cancer and give you a whole bunch of goodies instead. And so you're saying, okay, I know in God's twisted way, cancer could be good, but I'm asking you to give me the other good, right? So like it's very revealing, I think, right? So that of our perception of God.
I mean,
so what I think all these things mean is that going back to like Menstrach Godlach, right? That by design, I don't know what's going to happen, and I don't know what is even best. I have my perception of what's best, and I desire that, and I pray for that. But more than that, I pray for that I can experience the good that is already inherent in the world. Once I appreciated this like really fundamental difference, I see it everywhere. It's like all around Chassidus, it's in Hayom Yom, and I saw something, I'm like really hijacking the mic there, but I saw something recently and it hit me so strong, and then I shared it with someone, and I told them about your article in reference to it because I thought it was so on point. Was in Chayenu. I didn't read it, but someone posted it on Facebook, and I saw it.
It's an important clarification.
And this is from Kesser Shem Tov, of the Baal Shem Tov, right? So I'll just read it. A primary principle of living with a spiritual outlook is expressed in the verse, commit your affairs to God, and your plans will be established. Whatever opportunity or incident arrives your way, bear in mind it is sent directly from God. One should also pray that God send his way whatever is truly best for him, as seen from God's perspective, and not the kind of goodness that mortals appreciate. For it is quite possible that what a human considers beneficial for himself is in fact detrimental to him. Rather, he should cast everything into God's hands, all of his affairs and needs, trusting God to act in his best interest. As it is stated, Hashlech al Hashem, Yehavcha v'hu yichak alecha. Cast your burden onto God, and he'll take care of the rest. So, to me, that explains the whole deal, right? So, yes, I often translate events as I ought to be on human terms based on my experience. But what the prayer is that I should come to realize or experience how God's best intentions are also my best intentions. that God's best intentions are that have me in heart, right? That they're not two separate things. That I'm not fighting against God's will, right? That God wants to give me cancer and I want $1 million. All right. So it's like, I don't know, whatever God has in store for me is the best for me. And the function of prayer to heal him is aligning myself with that.
I mean, I think we also, as Jews do believe, though, that prayer can change things, right? I don't think when you say tell him for someone to get better, you actually want them to get better. And we believe that God does have the power to heal them. But now, if they don't, it doesn't mean that all those children at that rally didn't daven with enough kavana, and they have a problem. It's that for whatever reason, right? I mean, this is the only way you can have a consistent theology. Like, for whatever reason, God decided he said no. Right. It's not that we don't believe in using prayer that way, and I would never tell. I mean, if anyone ever tells a person who lost a child that they should, don't worry. You'll see the good in this one day.
Wait. So I think that whole thing is very much like, not very much. It's entirely a personal process,
right?
More so than like that is never something that you, right? So I bless my fellow with the best, like what you said, like, and whatever open-ended, whatever that means to them. That's why, like, I don't assume I know exactly what is best for you or that I even know what you want, right? But when it comes to myself, the opportunity for myself is to have that discovery for myself. Yeah, I think it's very, very different when it comes to like telling that to someone else. It's a personal process. Anyway, so I guess we kind of went off on a tangent there, but I think it's really, really fundamental. And when I read it in your article, it really put it well. And I think, I mean, to your point, Mendel, someone showed me something even where the Rebbe talks about this concept of actually changing God's mind or heart through prayer, and that's something that we have a unique ability as Jews or children of God to have that level of communication. But I don't know. I really don't know what to make of that, because I believe in some way those two can coincide and coexist. They're not contradictory. But I think if it's all that, I don't know. That to me, the only logical conclusion is that you're living with a very cruel God who wants to give you the opposite of what's good,
right.
And then you're constantly trying to manipulate him. And I was thinking it's kind of a timely conversation, because you often hear the sentiment around Rosh Hashanah or general, like, yeah, people like, sweeten. Yeah, exactly, right? So is that sweeten? Like, we do all these things around that, and we pray that whatever, because it's ordained on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, whatever is going to happen for the next year. So we're trying to like do all these things and be in our best behavior to remind God that we're going to be good and good boys and give us lots of treats. And we dip the apple in the honey. For the most part, it sounds like, okay, we're going to try to, get through to God to give us treats. And last couple of years, my perception of it is, it's for me. It's the reminder is for me to remember that whatever comes this year, it truly is sweet, even if I don't, So
that's a healthy outlook,
I think. I mean, I think the other one is just very abusive almost, because it sets forth like a very dangerous precedent, and and the only conclusion is that I'm left with is that God has it out for me, and I'm trying to twist his arm or trick him.
Right.
Anyway.
I mean, I would say both ways of looking at it are probably true to some extent, and it's a matter of which one you choose to focus on.
Right.
I mean, forcing God to change his behavior is a very, very ancient belief.
Right.
Even in the ancient, have you ever heard of Christina Hayes?
Christine
Hayes.
Are you sure you want to say this?
Okay, I want to.
Yeah.
No, but just within Judaism, it
Yeah.
goes back to Avram Avinu trying to
Heresy.
like change God's mind. Yeah.
No, she's just talking, whatever, Yale professor of biblical
Uh-huh.
studies. She's just talking about, in Bereshis, whatever, like the whole 6 days of creations and the Rakia. She ends up going on a little tangent about ancient Near East religious beliefs. And I think, whatever. But yeah, she's basically talking about how it was very much, a culture where if you did certain rituals the right way, then the gods were forced to listen to you. There's no other, they can't refuse.
Right.
I think that's not the Jewish.
Right. I don't think it's
look.
coincidental that you said gods, right? Because if it's gods, then you're gonna take care of this guy, and he's gonna give you your stuff, and but if it's one God, then it's the same God who's, making Holocaust, who's also, helping people have babies and healing the sick. So I have to, if I'm being intellectually honest, come to an appreciation of I do not know what really is best. I have my human instincts for what's best, and I hope that is in line with what God has in mind. But at the same time, I pray that whatever God has in mind, which is best and for the best, I should be able to experience it as that, and that's not something that comes natural. I think that's where people get tripped up. It's like where people almost punish themselves for thinking that we're supposed to. We're human beings. Obviously, we want what we want, and it's supposed to be that way. Anyway, obviously, a lot more that we could talk about with that. But so you had this kind of shift in that you went from being hell-bent or committed in mind in prayer to getting one particular result, to being more receptive to this just blessing. And Mendel put it so beautifully, you both did, that you actually, the miracle did happen, just not in the form that you had originally anticipated or hoped for.
Right.
And that's like the most, I think that's perfect.
And I don't think it was, one moment which brought me clarity about that, on that concept. It took me several years. And even I think in the beginning of starting the process of deciding to adopt and it becoming a real consideration, there was still like a voice in the back of my head which was, oh, this is a little fake. You know what I mean? Like we're not really gonna be parents. There's an element of like playing house here, but over time, obviously that changed.
So, and how long after that did the adoption conversation happen?
Oh, it was probably a few years. It was probably 2 years later. Adoption happened. The conversation started, I would say, so we'd had our last kind of failure in July of 2016, and at that point, I thought that we were going to continue. I felt obligated to continue. I didn't think that we could disappoint everyone by just giving up. And doctors have this way of talking. They'll say like, "Oh, it's not a race; it's a marathon." What does that mean? How many more years? How much more of this are you supposed to do? And so Mendel had in the past said to me, "Well, we could just adopt." But I wasn't receptive to that at the time. It wasn't the right time for me to hear that. And then something happened, and I went to a therapist, and in conversation with her, as I was describing this agony of how I'm like not wanting to really do this again, not thinking that I could go through the trauma of like the hope and then this horrible failure again, she said to me, "Well, what if you never do that again?" And that was the first time that I thought, what if we actually stopped? What if we actually did something different? It was just that moment alone was very freeing, to not feel like I needed to keep doing this. Though I did get some. I remember we went, the nice last doctor we used gave us a little bit of our money back because we had bought a two package deal. And so when I went back to get the check from them, the nurse there, who didn't, nice woman, said something to me like, yeah, some people just aren't strong enough to do this. And I didn't say anything to her, but afterwards, Mendel's like, you should have. But in that moment, I didn't say anything to her. But yeah, there was this sentiment of like, oh, you're so weak and you're just giving up. That's not how I felt.
How did you feel?
Just free of like, we tried so much. Like, what else are we supposed to do?
Let me ask you the question this way. At what point did the decision to explore adoption shift from a last resort or second best to like, this is what was supposed to happen? This is because it's.
Well, the moment we went to an info session, we ended with the agency that we ended up using, and when we drove there, we learned everything. It's very, you're hearing all these terms for the first time, all these legal things, and it's a blur. But I remember as we left, we were driving home, and they gave me this purple folder that I was holding that had a picture of a baby on it, and that was the first time that I remember driving with Mendel and feeling like, wow, we're actually going to build a family. Like, this is real. This might happen. For many years, I didn't have it. In the beginning when we were married, I'm like, oh, maybe I'll get pregnant. That's crazy. Or I'm so young. I'm too young for this. And then we'd do a treatment and I would think, maybe this summer I'll be pregnant. But I would always lose that. And then at some point I felt very jaded and thought, like, I would even protect myself and think, this is likely not going to work. Thinking that maybe that thinking will help me. But this time it was that naive feeling again. That was different.
And I think we both felt free in the sense that, yeah, sure. So we're going to go for this adoption thing. And I mean, it doesn't mean that I don't like the give up term because yeah, sure. Like, God is all powerful. If he wants to make us have a biological children, great, good on you. Like, go ahead, right? All these things are still possible. But right now we're going to put our physical resources into adoption because that's also another avenue that God gave us. Right, that's another option we can go for. So that's what we're
right. But there is an element and when people call me, I always tell them this. Like, there's an element of closing the door. You don't want to be in the middle of grieving when you've moved on to this different thing. It shouldn't be a last resort. And if it still feels like a last resort, then maybe you're not ready because a child that's coming into your home doesn't deserve to feel like a last resort. And likely, when you go through the process and the baby is placed in your arms, you're not going to feel that way. But still, you want to be in the right headspace. So we had grieved, we had mourned, and then we closed that door in many ways. God can do what he wants, but we have moved on. Like,
well, that's what
right.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
We're going to put our
we didn't
resources.
give up, but
right.
we got a different focus. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that,
and it didn't require weight gain.
But I think that perspective of this is another avenue that God has given us to look into, to put our resources behind, also had that perspective also had an effect on what we were open to in terms of adoption.
I remember getting the call. I was at work for our last failure. It was devastating because I still had that. I'd maintained that jaded thing where I was thinking it's not going to work, but hoping it might work this time. The doctor was very hopeful, and then it didn't work. And I went at that moment, I had to kind of plan what was next. So at first, I had decided I was going to make all these appointments with other doctors, and I was going to take this seriously. And then I realized I don't know, I just felt horrible about it. I didn't want to do it anymore. It was like this anvil on your chest, like you can't breathe. You're underwater. You're choking. That's what it felt like. And then as soon as we made that shift, and the therapist mentioned that to me, which was probably within a week or so, or very close together. Maybe it was, and then I told Mendel about it, and I heard the way his voice sounded, how relieved he was that we were going to stop what we'd been doing up till now. I don't know, all of that together made that shift. That doesn't mean that, that there aren't times, even now, when I think like, oh, like what would pregnancy be like? What would this be like? But it's completely, the intensity is completely different. It's not like an oppressive wound. I don't know, oppressive wound, but it's not a raw wound. It's a thought.
So how do you come to terms with so much of the sentiments or things within halacha, even that there seems to be such an emphasis on blood and lineage? Is that something that you deal with? Or?
Well, I mean, there's a number of things to get at. One, how do I come to terms with it? I'm just not so into the blood lineage stuff, so I don't really need to in that sense, because it's just not to me, it's not of primary importance to me. From a technical standpoint, just technically, there are paiskim who hold that adopting fulfills your obligation, your halachic obligation of having children. I don't know the details, but there are paiskim who believe that.
Right, and that's why even during reading the ksuba or at the bris, or when our son will get an aliyah, even though technically he's ben Avram, he can say ben Menachem Mendel.
Right. Yeah.
I think that was Rav Moshe. Yeah. Rav Moshe was bomb when it came to adoption, and
what I mean more is
but I think the more important thing for me is just being honest that there are certain aspects of being an adopted parent. It's not like everyone else, right? They're not a biological child. I'm not a biological parent. Maybe there are things in halacha or whatever Jewish life somehow that I'm not technically fulfilling part of, however you want to phrase it.
No, I don't mean it. Yeah.
No. So what I'm saying is, it's not this thing that I need to come to terms with. It's that this is different, and I am very happy that we were chosen by God to do this. I mean, again, I like shock value, but people have had conversations with me about like what it's like. But yeah, but like, don't you like really want biological children one day? And like,
I'm gonna find out who this is after this conversation.
Are you sure? Like, just trying to like really get in my mind. And I'm like, look, let me make it as clear as I can to you. I thank God every single day that He never gave us biological children. Because if He had, I never would have been open to this, and I wouldn't have my Isaac and Fanya.
There is also a concept that there in Family Redeemed, the Rav, by Soloveitchik, talks about the idea of covenantal parenthood, where he talks about there was two, I might mess this up a little bit, but there's two states of parenthood in Bereshis. We have Adam and Chava, and Adam and Chava are natural parents. What's natural parents? Chava, she doesn't even think about having a child. It's just something that happens. It's instinctual. Her motherhood is this like all-consuming physical thing. And what's Adam's role in natural parenthood? Honestly, it's nothing. He creates the kids, helps create the kids, and then he's kind of absent. And then with the covenant, with Avram and Sarah, we have this elevated form of parenthood, which is covenantal parenthood, where Avraham becomes teacher, educator. His job is to bring the child into the Misorah, and Sarah is his partner in this, really changing from this like instinctual, natural, raw, to choosing this. And someone, an old colleague of mine who's also a teacher and I've learned a lot from him. He introduced this text to me, and it was just fit so nicely with the concept of adoption. It really does. It's not. You're right. It's not. We don't have that natural biological connection, but there is something where we're bringing children into the Misora. That's what it is.
Yeah. It seems like so often we grow up with, especially in Chabad, because we're always doing Mitzvayim, so we have this mantra, like, the only thing that makes a Jew is if you're born to a Jewish mother,
Right.
and we almost shun and, like, throw cold water on anything that says anything like, well, I don't believe it, or I don't feel it, or I don't identify. Well, it doesn't make a difference, And while that's all true and fine, we almost kind of dismiss the fact that, well, the first Jew, well, God made a covenant with him, but why him? Because he discovered and he chose and he defied his father and he defied everything around him to believe in only one God. There is an element to this whole thing, which is from a place of a choice and a covenant and something that someone, so yeah, I guess there's both, but sometimes I feel like maybe that the lineage thing gets more play because it has like there's something, I don't know, more primitive or appealing about it. I don't know.
It's very hard for people. It's also the concept of adopting children that weren't born Jewish. And let me just say that the reason, listen, we were chosen, we were meant to be with our children. That's not even a question. But often when people enter this world, the first thing they're like, oh, what about Jewish children? I get this question a lot when people call me. And there really aren't many Jewish children. There are children with special needs. There's a guy who runs a Jewish children's adoption network. So I might be butchering the name. And they've placed like thousands of Jewish children with special needs. But a lot of Jews are not placing their children for adoption, or they're aborting them. So that's the reality on the ground. And so when you're in America, those are not the children that are in need of homes. But I get that question a lot. It's a real mental hurdle for people to adopt a child that's not born Jewish. And I just had an experience with my friend's daughter who saw me in the park and was asking about it, adoption in general, and Jewish, not Jewish, and that was one of the things I said to her, is that every person has a divine spark, and our role is to reveal that divine spark. So regardless of where you come from or who you are or what color of your skin, you have a divine spark in you. And what an opportunity it is for us as parents to be able to reveal that divine spark, to bring children into the covenant who now become Jews.
You encounter quite a number of inappropriate or like stupid questions, and we were talking before how those can often be learning experiences. Like there's there's basic misinformation or things that were just never talked about or developed and until things that are new are encountered and we get an opportunity to discuss those things. What are maybe, I don't know, top 2 or 3 of the questions or comments that are, I don't know, get under your skin or something that you find yourself repeatedly revisiting?
Do you know they're real parents? So why is that offensive? We are their real parents. Meaning, what does a real parent mean? We are their adoptive parents. We are real parents. So I'll rephrase it and I say, oh, do you mean their biological parents?
You'll hear adults say that, or the real.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other thing I say is, well, also that's private information. So it's important to me that they know that information before you know that information. Now, I already know. Mendel always says to me, afterwards, he'll say, tone. Because sometimes if I'm caught, I've gotten much better at, rephrasing things as a learning experience, but sometimes when you catch me at the wrong moment, or I'm just tired at that, and I've heard it too many times, then I do, like, my tone gets kind of mean. And he's like, tone. They're like poor Hasidic people that are trying to learn something from you. Be nice to them.
So that's
real parents. Real parents is one. Are they Jewish? it's just the way it's not that it's
Are they Jewish is really.
it's you should determine closeness. Like, it's not appropriate to meet someone in the park and ask a question like that. You know what I mean? We get a lot of double takes. I've already gotten so used to it, I forget. But we get a lot of double takes, and are they Jewish? It's just it's not the time and place when we're standing in a park and and thankfully my kids are little, so they don't understand anything yet. But in the next few years, they will. And when will that stop? So I say yes, they are, because they are.
I like asking, why do you have a shidduch?
What else? I mean, why did you adopt black children? Our children are biracial.
Well, yeah.
What?
We're like, why didn't you wait for a white one?
Oh, that's one. Yeah. There weren't any white ones. Because there's definitely in the language, there's definitely it's just a real shock for people why we would adopt black children. That's another real mental hurdle, especially in Crown Heights.
It seems like such a loaded situation that isn't that common, and you're like, you didn't ask for this, but you find yourselves needing or choosing to have conversations that may be awkward, but necessary. Would that be right?
Well, I don't find them awkward.
Mm-hmm.
You're better than me. Yeah, I mean, black is the other in Crown Heights. Black is the other. So, and for many people, it comes like loaded with, history of what happened in Crown Heights not so long ago. So and before we should really just say that Mendel is the one. I was the one that at first was not open to a child of another race. I originally wanted to only have a white child. I was worried what it would be like in Crown Heights and what it would be like in our world. And then
we're both still worried.
We are still worried, and we might not end up living in Crown Heights because we might not be able to. But that was something of real concern to me. And then as I started to get involved in the process, we learned that I think in our agency, a white child, people who are only open to a white child will wait an average, of 12 to 18 months or more. And if you're open to a black child, you could be placed 6 months or less. So aside from the fact that, yes, obviously we wanted to be parents, that's pretty staggering. And now actually the agency we used you can't join the program unless you're open to a child of another race, because they have so many people who only want a white child. And I remember being at some info session or something, and there's this woman next to me, from the Upper East Side, and in my mind I thought, she's obviously going to be open to a child of another race. It's just me. I live in Crown Heights. I'm Lubavitcher. I can't do that. But she has her own calculations about why she can't do it either. So all of this together started to change my mind. Also, Mendel would text me adorable pictures of black babies. I'd be like, how could you say no? It worked. It really helped. And that's it. That's how we changed our mind. But we also not that it's it. We also spoke to Jews of color in our community who had, varying responses for us.
Yeah. Not all their experiences were good.
Not all of their experiences were good. But some had good experiences. Some were very instructive about what they admired about how they were raised or what attitude they were raised with, but also the sentiment that when someone says something to you about what you look like, the color of your skin, you say to them that, I feel so sorry for you, but the Rebbe would be so upset with what you're saying. Something like that. She said it much better. And a lot of comfort that I found in this process has been looking back at the relationships that the Rebbe had, things that the Rebbe said, which are so affirming of other people and so affirming of each person's divine spark and their essence. And so when I have these conversations with people, I just blame the Rebbe. Like, look what the Rebbe said, So we can talk about culture. We can talk about, what it was like growing up in Crown Heights. And I don't deny any of that, but there's also like the overarching view that the Rebbe had about elevating each person, and honestly, I do feel hopeful about the younger generation. You know, I've had events where I've spoken about our story, and there are young Hasidish women that I think that if I would meet them, I would assume X, Y, and Z about them. But they're open. They're open to hearing this, and they're open to talking differently to their children. We had an incident where Mendel overheard someone talking to their kid about like rephrasing what their kid said about someone black, and I don't want to go into details just because I don't want to say the story, but the point was it was very Mendel said it to me as a sad story, but I thought it's so hopeful. Like imagine this young mother, I don't know, in her 30s, is reorienting the way her kid is talking about race. That's crazy, you know. So, and people have said to me, "Oh, like why are you even living here right now?" I choose to try. I choose to have some faith in the people that are around me, and have some hope in my peers. And if it's not going to work, then we'll have to move. But and I'm obviously not going to sacrifice our children for this. But I do believe that in the younger generation, or even in the older generation, like we have peers. I remember being at meals when we knew that we were thinking about we're gonna adopt, the child to be black and or could be black. And sitting at meals where they'd be like, Schwarz is this, Schwarz is that, and thinking, what am I, how? Like, what will they think? What will they, and even those people on their terms, they're trying. Schwarz is a word which I would love to talk about.
Unpack. Yeah.
I mean, that word is bandied around all the time, and and people love to defend it by saying
It just means black.
Just means black. It's not. There's a tone. There's a derision, and
The way it's used is like
a slur.
She's not Stam dating a guy. She's dating a Schwarzer.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And
so like there's us, there's them, and then there's
Schwarzes, and Schwarzes are stupid and criminals and rapists.
It's pretty crazy.
It's and so when people say it around me, I've had people close to me say that. So I say to them, "Oh, you mean like Isaac?" And then they get scared. But I don't know. I'm afraid. When I've spoken to women, I've said, like in our community, I like basically plead with them, like, you know, I see my children and the way my son, who's a little older, is like experiencing Yiddishkeit for the first time, and like you see like it sounds so like hokey, but his like neshama, like he's burning bright and like experiencing all of these things for the first time, and then he can go to school and it will be shattered, you know. And that's it's such a frightening thought, and I will do anything in my power that I can to try to prevent that, but I might not be able to. So I have to build them up, and then I have to plead with other mothers and other parents and say, like, please, you know, let's like reframe that, you know.
It's
not me, it's the Rebbe.
Yeah.
That's what I say.
a few stories that come to mind. One I heard recently. I'm going to fudge up the details, but it was something to the effect of there was a few different black kids in Labav Yeshiva on Ocean Parkway. It's two different stories. One, I know who it is, but the ending of one story is that the Rebbe wrote to Anhala to take care of the situation. The kid was being bullied, and it wasn't addressed. And the Rebbe called the Anhala because it came back to him.
Whoa.
And the Rebbe said, "I'm gonna come to the school myself if this is not addressed immediately. And things aren't put into place." Yeah. I could send. I could.
Wow.
Yeah, please. I'm
I would
definitely
love to
gonna
see
say
that.
that's being filed away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would assume that the people, the Shabbos meals that you were at, like, you don't think that these are, in any way bad people. These are misinformed, or
A lot of it is about lack of experience. I mean, your horizons are so small when you.
Sounds very offensive the way you're saying. Your horizons are so small.
No, what I mean is when you don't know anybody.
Right.
Right.
When you don't know a black person in the world.
Right.
good people will fall prey to stereotyping and racism wherever there's enough of an excuse for it to be, go under the radar until we encounter a reason to challenge ourselves, just like we are uncomfortable about challenging ourselves for the betterment of our character in every other arena.
Yep.
And here we have like a valid reason enough that to blame it on because of what happened to my cousin or my uncle and the time I got mugged or whatever. Like there's always something to attribute it to, and all of a sudden I have no personal reason to like, you know.
And what do you mean? I mean, we ourselves. I mean, I've evolved.
Mm-hmm.
I think I grew up. I grew up in Boston. My parents are good people who never said a racist word. But there was still a certain tone that we had that we've all changed. Like I was forced to see the other side in a way that I never had to. Like I don't have the luxury of like pretending like, you know, racist things don't happen, or it's harder to be, you know, a black man wearing a hood around police. You know what I mean? Like my reality has changed, and it's hard for me sometimes, especially. There's never an excuse for violence, but there is also a whole. There's a background which, as you know, Lubavitchers growing up, many of us in like middle class homes or whatever it is, you know, many of us not in broken homes. There's just a reality that we never see the other side. We don't know. There are areas in this country where, you know, all fathers are absent, or many fathers are absent. Well, what does that mean? So you've never seen a stable marriage around you ever. You've never seen stable relationships. You know, lots of people that you know are in prison. You're likely going to go to prison for a time, and it's not that big of a deal. Like, there's just all of these things that are not we're lucky that that's not our reality. So it's like, it just provides a different picture. Again, not to excuse crime, not to excuse violence, but to provide like some type of larger picture of how does this happen, you know, or just this pick yourself up by the bootstraps. You could just do it. Well, maybe you can't do it. You know, maybe, you know, you're in a terrible public school, and if you're going to do well, like all the odds are against you. You're a star that you did that. And that was something I think I was blind to for a long time because I didn't need to see that.
And to be clear, like what you're describing isn't really a race-specific thing. This is more of just the world. This is the world.
No, it's like, what does poverty bring? What do broken families bring? What do absent fathers bring? That could be here. It could be in Crown Heights. It could be in
Appalachia.
In the Appalachian, in an area in Pennsylvania. What does unemployment do? Like all of these things, and we're lucky that many of us don't know about that, and it's like it's eye-opening.
Now, you both have like your pulse on like the culture of Crown Heights. You have a good sense of it, like an honest one. If you had a magic wand, like what would you want to see changed, or what would change look like in this area?
Whoa, that's deep. Want to try that?
I mean, I think it would just be embracing that genuine view of the Rebbe about the essential dignity of each person, no matter where they came from. You know, Jews were chosen. We have something very special. But non-Jew has some human dignity within them, and it's how lucky we are that we are the chosen people, that we're able to show what that means, to be loving, to be kind, to be good. You know, just embracing those things that are already there that we sometimes forget. Like that would do so much.
It's like funny. Like a lot of, I don't want to say a lot. Sometimes you bump into Lubavitchers who will take, some in the relatively speaking, a minor thing that the Rebbe spoke about.
Not wearing contacts.
Like turn it into like, right? Never get an ultrasound.
No,
right? Oh, okay.
Be careful.
All right, back to beep. Right? They'll take something and be so literal and so literal in its application, and like it's such a serious thing. But then like when the Rebbe, I don't know, says something about, around the lines of the dignity of all people to some mayor that came by or some other politician, it's like they kind of, you get the sense that they view that incident as like, oh yeah, the Rebbe was kind of just like, whatever,
being political.
Move the man along, he's being political.
Right. It's
when
so
really
true.
that's like a really fundamental idea about the world that the Rebbe is
Right.
exhibiting.
And it was also what's been so, I don't know, I think over the years, in some ways I've had some like maybe distancing at times from like Lubavitch and the things that we stress, but this is something that's like tightened me again in many ways, is that the Rebbe's views, let's say, on criminal justice reform were so ahead of their time. It's like only now, and now everyone's realizing, and now everyone's writing about it, and now, left and right can't believe that, we had minimum sentencing and this and that. But the Rebbe saw that ahead of his time, and there was some sense that even a violent criminal has some hope, or we should try, or we should think, and it's just it's crazy. It's like so not conservative.
Right.
I mean, it's being hopeful about people. I mean that conservative view, or that view of looking at each person and seeing like our natural fallenness. That's obviously a very Christian idea, and this is like looking at someone and seeing the hope and that potential. It's really wild and new agey in some way. It's so. But I do think that we are slowly changing. There was that video, that 8th day video with Ellie Marcus, and I messaged my friend who's married to Ellie Marcus, and I said, I love that video. Like, not only like the different kids, there was a black kid in it, there was this, there was that. It was just, kids are gonna watch that, and that's gonna, that 6-year-old who's watching that is gonna be very affected by that. So I think like we're slowly having these cultural changes, and I don't know, I choose to be hopeful about it. Like, I yes, if I could wave my magic wand, I would. But I also think like it's gonna happen. Do you agree?
Mm-hmm. That's all I got.
Thanks for doing this.
Absolutely.
Sure,
Thank you
thank
for having us.
All right. Any closing remarks or statements?
Stop saying Schwarze, please. Please.
Yeah, that would be greatly appreciated.
Please.
Oh, man.
Unless you're really, really old and like
And you can't even hear us explain why it's not good.
yeah, would be helpful. Cool.
All right. Thank you so much, Mendel. Thank you, Malka.
Thank you.